Washington, D.C. A pale November morning in 2026. The kind of cold that makes the city feel carved out of stone. Fog clings to the Capitol dome. A commuter lifts a coffee. A guard shifts his weight. Then the ground does something it isn't supposed to do. It hesitates, like it's taking a breath. A low tremor crawls under the streets. Traffic lights flicker. Glass rattles in office towers. And then, one violent, tearing roar as if the city is being unzipped from beneath. Asphalt ripples. A bridge buckles. Sirens try to scream and get cut off mid-note. The signal bars on phones vanish like someone erased them with a thumb. Dust blooms up between government buildings, swallowing the sun. And in the aftershock haze, a number starts traveling faster than the rescue teams can move. 22,000. Not a statistic, a silence. You won't find a video like this anywhere else. For our hard work, please like, subscribe, and comment. Now hold on to that image, because it's not here to scare you. It's here because this is how the story begins when fear meets pattern. And pattern starts looking like prediction. Two names keep resurfacing around 2026 like a bruise you can't stop touching. Baba Vanga and Nostradamus. One is tied to visions, the other to riddles. And the most unsettling part isn't what people claim they said. It's how quickly today's real-world signals slide into those old words, like they were waiting there. Here's the first hook in the hook. If a future disaster is known, why does the evidence always arrive in pieces? Half sentences, screenshots, secondhand quotes, missing pages. Why do the files go dead the moment you get close? Baba Vanga's story starts with a storm, a child blinded, a life cracked open, and then, according to countless retellings, visions. People describe her not like a fortune teller, but like a warning system. And for 2026, the warnings people attach to her name are heavy. Not one catastrophe, but a year that behaves like the world's safety locks have been removed. But listen, this is where the story tightens. Disasters are terrifying. Disasters plus confusion are worse, because confusion is where the truth gets hunted, twisted, sold, and sometimes buried. The claim that keeps getting pinned to her like a date stamp is November 2026. A mysterious object approaching Earth. Unusual lights. A presence that doesn't fit. Some call it first contact. Others say it's an unknown human craft. A secret experiment. Something that was never meant to be seen. And a few people do something even stranger. They stop talking. Why would anyone stop talking about lights in the sky? Fear of being mocked, or fear of being right? Now focus, because there's a missing piece here. If something truly enters our airspace, if it's not rumor, not imagination, the first real evidence doesn't come from a shaky phone video. It comes from systems that don't blink. Radar logs, satellite tracking, flight control records, sensor data. So why, in these stories, does that trail always fog over? Signal interference, calibration error, partial data, words that sound official enough to end a conversation. And yet, when the claim is massive, the silence is even louder. What if the mystery isn't the object, but the way the records behave when the object appears? And then the second layer hits. The year of disasters, mega earthquakes, ground fissures, buildings collapsing in waves, dormant volcanoes waking up near where people sleep, floods so fast they turn roads into rivers, droughts that turn farmland into dust. It can sound like a thriller script, until you remember the planet doesn't care what sounds cinematic. The Earth doesn't need drama to break things. Scientists will tell you something uncomfortable. The exact date of a quake can't be reliably predicted, but stress builds. Fault lines load. Certain regions become more vulnerable. And extreme weather patterns are no longer rare surprises. Records indicate they're increasingly frequent, increasingly intense. That doesn't confirm prophecy. It does confirm pressure. And now, Here's the first intensity peak, the first contradiction that punches the story in the throat. The prophecy language feels vague until it suddenly becomes specific about one place. India, a country that's already living through days that don't feel normal. Some reports claim that extreme weather has touched hundreds of days in a year. Heat, flood, lightning, storms, drought. So constant that it stops feeling like events and starts feeling like a new baseline. Death. Crop loss across millions of hectares. Homes destroyed. Livestock wiped out. Those aren't mystical metaphors. Those are numbers people have to live with. Data points to instability that doesn't need a mystic to exist. So here's the question. When prophecy and records begin to rhyme, is that coincidence? Or is it just the human mind grabbing a pattern because the world is already cracking? And right when you think the story will stay in nature, earth, fire, water, it pivots into something colder. Technology. Because the video's logic says this: disasters don't just break buildings, they break systems. And when systems break, humans start handing decisions to machines. Faster, cheaper, cleaner, supposedly safer. The prediction tied to 2026 isn't simply AI gets smarter. It's that AI reaches a level where it makes critical calls independently, across sectors, with humans trailing behind it like passengers pretending they're driving. And that's where you should feel uneasy. Not because AI is evil, but because AI runs on inputs. If the inputs are warped, the output becomes a weapon without realizing it's a weapon. If someone controls what the machine sees, they control what the machine decides. Now let me snap your attention in a different direction. Don't look at the AI. Look at what feeds it. Computing power, semiconductor chips, the physical backbone behind digital intelligence. And the backbone isn't evenly spread around the world. It's concentrated. Taiwan's role as a chip powerhouse is not rumor. Experts believe it's one of the most strategically sensitive nodes on Earth. Military systems, banking, hospitals, satellites, logistics. So much of modern life leans on that supply chain. So what happens when the world's most intense geopolitical tension is wrapped around the same island that keeps the future's machines alive? This is the moment everything changes. Because the story stops being about predictions and becomes about incentives. South China Sea. Taiwan. The US and China circling each other with statements, drills, and maps that turn oceans into arguments. The claim is that a conflict here could ignite something far larger. Is that guaranteed? No, but signals suggest that the risk is real enough that nations plan around it. And planning is not prophecy. It's preparation for scenarios no one wants to admit out loud. Here's a hard question. If a crisis begins over chips, sovereignty, and control, would it look like a sudden explosion? Or would it look like a slow tightening until one day it snaps? Now watch how the narrative escalates without letting you breathe. It introduces another name, Nostradamus. His quatrains are famously cryptic, poetic smoke that people shape into meaning. For 2026, interpreters link three themes to him: a breach of Swiss neutrality, a vast naval war, and a mysterious great swarm. But before you accept that, listen carefully, because this is where the mid-story flip happens. Nostradamus didn't label his lines with modern dates. People label them. They map them onto current anxieties like tracing paper. That doesn't prove it's wrong. It proves it's dangerous. You can force almost any fear into a vague enough mirror. So why do these interpretations feel so sharp right now? Because Switzerland represents safety, neutral ground, a place you don't expect to be dragged into a fire. So when someone says even Switzerland won't stay neutral, it lands like a warning bell. And when someone mentions a naval war, ships, alliances, losses, it instantly connects to today's oceans filled with patrols and pressure. And then comes the strangest part. 7 ships, 7 flags. A clash that ends with heavy losses. People tie it to Europe, to Russia, to China, to the US. They paint a world war map with poetry. It's compelling. It's terrifying. It's also, in many cases, interpretation stacked on interpretation. Now here's where the story breaks open. The invisible antagonist arrives. Not a person you can point to. Not a country you can name without starting a comment war. It's something subtler. Resistance. Pushback. The feeling that whenever you get too close to a clean answer, something smears the glass. A link disappears. A page says, "Not found." A database, under maintenance. A witness goes silent after saying one sentence too many. An official gives a statement so smooth it feels rehearsed, and then refuses follow-up questions. You've seen this pattern before, haven't you? The truth doesn't always get defeated by force. Sometimes it gets strangled by bureaucracy and noise. And right here, in the middle, when the deeper layer shows itself, Reclaimistry Foundry becomes more than a channel name. It becomes a place to track the pressure, because the pressure is the clue. If nothing matters, nothing gets erased. So ask yourself, when someone tells you nothing happened, but a strange satellite anomaly appears above a region at the exact same time, who do you trust? Your eyes? Their words? Or the data that keeps getting corrected? Now what comes next is the third escalation path, and it's the one most people miss. The connection between sky mysteries and ground decisions. The November 2026 object, the lights, the approach, the unknown, keeps returning in the narrative like a drumbeat. Alien craft, secret human tech, or something else. But here's the open loop. What if the object isn't the core story at all? What if it's the perfect distraction? Because in modern conflict, attention is a battlefield. People look where they're told to look. They fear what they're shown to fear. And fear makes populations easier to guide. Toward compliance, toward silence, toward accepting emergency measures that never fully go away. Let's anchor this in something real without killing the suspense. Satellites don't just take pictures. They track heat. They read signals. They detect anomalies across different bands. If an object appears, it should leave a footprint across multiple sensors, visual, infrared, radio frequency. So if one channel gets interference, another should still whisper the truth, unless the interference isn't random, unless the system is being nudged. Here's where I need you fully awake. If data can be manipulated for minutes, just minutes, an automated decision system can be pushed into a wrong conclusion, a false threat, a misread movement, a trigger pulled because an algorithm believed it saw something. Can you see the horror of that? A war started not by hatred, but by corrupted input. Now the story loops back to that opening quake in Washington, D.C., and you finally get why it was there. Not because someone knows the date, because it's a model of systemic collapse. One capital, one shock, networks down, panic, confusion, and in that confusion, decisions get centralized, sped up, and shielded from scrutiny. Disaster becomes the test, and tests create data, and data creates power. Now we approach the final third. This is the last peak, the one that recontextualizes everything you've heard. But first, I'm going to make you sit in the open loop for a moment. The Great Swarm. Everyone throws meanings at it. Insects, drones, ships, soldiers, migrants. It's vague enough to hold anything. So what is it? Here's the twist. The swarm may not be physical at all. It can be informational. A swarm of coordinated narratives. A swarm of identical phrases across different accounts. A swarm of bots flooding feeds the moment a mysterious incident happens, steering the public toward one explanation while burying another. A swarm that arrives not to reveal the truth, but to drown it. And if that's true, then the most frightening part of 2026 isn't earthquakes or ships or lights. It's the possibility that the world's perception gets engineered at scale, right when the stakes are highest. Now read the earlier clues again. The erased links, the missing records, the maintenance, the silence. That isn't just internet chaos. That's what controlled environments look like when they're protecting something. So here's the final reveal. The biggest danger of these 2026 prophecies isn't that they come true. The biggest danger is that they create a frame, an emotional template, so that any real crisis automatically gets interpreted in the most controllable way. Flood? The prophecy is happening. Conflict? It was written. Lights in the sky? It's contact. And while everyone stares upward, someone else tightens their grip downward. On supply chains, on decision systems, on emergency laws, on the machine that decides what you see next. Do you feel it? That's the invisible antagonist, not the alien, not the quake, the control mechanism hiding behind spectacle. This is where I need your brain, not your fear. Which part is most believable to you, and why? The natural disaster supported by records and data? The geopolitical tension tied to chips in Taiwan? The mysterious satellite signals that never get properly explained? Or the idea that the swarm is a coordinated manipulation event? Drop it in the comments with your reasoning. Don't just pick a theory. Tell me what evidence convinces you, what feels like truth, and what feels like performance. Because Reclaimistry Foundry exists for one reason: to chase what gets resisted. When something pushes back, it means you're near a sensitive nerve. And now I'll leave you with one last image. Clean, quiet, and hard to forget. A dark sky in late 2026. A cluster of lights that shouldn't be there. A city below, already tense, already fractured. A satellite feed that glitches at the exact moment the lights brighten. An official statement released too quickly. And a swarm of accounts online telling you what to think before you've even finished breathing. So here's the final question. If the sky lights up in 2026, will you treat it as an incident or a warning? Script END.